following this wrong path is not going to lead us anywhere. We need a change in terms of our approach to dealing with the issue.
Now, I think the stakeholders in the Nigerian future who look beyond politics have to begin to rise up. Well, sooner or later they will. If this trajectory continues, they will be forced to rise up. If we allow the government to make the kind of mistakes it is trying to make right now, by the time the symptoms have increased, they may have gone beyond the point where we'll be able to do anything anymore. So right now, I think the people who know how to counsel government, those who know how to advise government, stakeholders who are beyond the political gains, need to intervene right now and to help the government to see that, please take this out of the political issues. This is war. If we continue to accept to the rest of the world that we have an insurgency, what we are admitting is that there is a popular or unpopular uprising in Nigeria. Now, let me say this again, because this thing has become so serious that there are things I will say publicly that normally we would have reserved for specialist meetings before. We forget that also because we are in the faith community, we are the ones who counsel and pray for the soldiers who are at the war front. Now, I want to mention that one of my young soldiers in the war front was weeping the last time we had a conversation. Why? He said a lot of his colleagues never lived to collect their first pay in the war front. Number two, he began to point out and confirm things to us. We pray for these boys. All these boys are there defending the country. We are pretending as if there's not a terrible thing going on in this nation. He began to inform me that even when they get ammunition and they're being trained with guns, the embargo against Nigeria will not have been made public if not for the South African debacle. Now, the truth is this. We are facing all sorts of pressures internationally and locally. And we are feeding these boys to a machinery that is spilling blood all over the place. And it's advancing because even when we take a little gains, they come back. The boy, one called me and said, listen, the Nigerian Air Force consistently sometimes kills more Nigerian soldiers. Because when they go out to go attack, they take up a position. While they're waiting, the enemies are there. They say they're waiting for some order from somewhere or whatever it is, some form of confusion in the fronts. At least a while back, it improved after some time. But when the Nigerian Air Force is coming, instead of strafing enemy forces, it ends up uploading on. In fact, last week, I think we lost 70 Nigerian troops.
17?
70.
70 Nigerian soldiers.
Through friendly fire.
How do you get this information?
Oh, we are in the faith community.
We want to be sure that this is empirical.
Well, I'm talking here as the fact that, remember first of all that because I was special advisor to CAN president and advised 3 CAN presidents in a row, 14 years ago we began to talk about this problem and how it would rise if it kept on going unchecked. And the point is, because we're in the faith community, people come for things they would not say publicly. We get to listen to them. We get to pray for people who are going to the war front, for mothers who are to release their children to go and fight on behalf of the country. In fact, the truth is this, that sometimes we have a divided front. I don't want to go into details that are scary.
Okay, let me ask now, Ekhomu, as a way of introducing you, you've heard all of what Pastor Ladi Thompson has said. His definition of what we're facing becomes really grim when you hear something like we are believing that we're fighting an insurgency, which is not what we're doing. It's supposed to be terrorism, and you don't negotiate with terrorism. With an insurgency, you can have negotiation, you can have ceasefire, but terrorism, what kind of ceasefire are we asking for, are we expecting?
Mr. Kayode, I have said on your channel here several times in the past that in fact this is terrorism, this is not insurgency, because insurgency needs a popular upswell. It needs the support of the citizenry for it to be an insurgency. You know, like what you've seen like in the Niger Delta. That is why the leaders were known, they were faces. It's not this faceless thing we have where people are setting off IEDs, killing people, you know, senselessly everywhere. And this is not insurgency. This is pure terror. This is extremism, fundamentalism, if you may. I have a book coming out early next year on this. But you know, it's really very unfortunate, and because it's not properly defined, that's why what Reverend Thompson is saying is very important. Because it's not properly defined, we are solving the wrong problem. In philosophy of science, we call it the type 3 error, the probability of solving the wrong problem. Because of course, you are in the wrong play field, so you never solve the right problem. That's why we call it everything but what it is. We say it's poverty, it's youthful exuberance, it's almanjiri, it's this. I mean, it's a breakdown of law and order, pure and simple. And I just gave a lecture in Atlanta about 2-3 weeks ago. We are part of something that is happening globally, and we haven't seen it. ISIS, Al-Nusra, Ansardin, that is Ansardin in Mali, Al-Nusra in Libya, ISIS, the guys out there. Now you even have Al-Qaeda in India. They have one, AQIA. That's a new one. Of course, you know Al-Qaeda in Arabian Peninsula, you know Hakim, Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb. You know, we are part of that whole unholy thing going on there, and which is dedicated to one thing, shedding human blood. You saw what ISIS is doing in Syria. They kill soldiers, behead them, and put their heads on sticks. You know, and that's what BH is copying here. Kill the guy, the Air Force guy who was flying, and put his head, you know, out there. So that's why we are perhaps solving the wrong problem. That's why we're thinking we can go and have a dialogue or a ceasefire. There's no ceasing and there's no firing. I mean, they're not interested in that until the only cure for this is to kill, you know, cut off the head of the snake. That's it. And then when you do that, of course, you know.
But when you talk about that, we've heard that Abubakar Shekau was killed, but we're not really sure whether that
we need corpus evidence. We need corpus delicti. You can't just say somebody was killed. After all, the picture that we saw, it was identified as Mohammed Bashir. So that's not Abu Shekau. Now, earlier we were told Abu Shekau had been killed, but we couldn't find corpus evidence. Now, whoever was killed came out and showed us somebody's head he had beheaded. So I don't know who's dead and who's still alive. But show me corpus evidence. See, I'm a security man. I work from evidence. If you show me corpus delicti, this is the body of evidence. Aha! I'll say yes, indeed, Shekau is dead. But for right now, I'll just say Shekau is maybe hiding or, you know, whatever, or maybe he's busy.
Well, from what we read about him, he can't be in hiding. They say he's not that kind of person who would hide. If he's alive, he'll still be in the forefront.
Yes.
What you insinuated is that this Boko Haram is part of Al-Qaeda.
Yes.
In which case, those who are constantly wondering about how they get their financing,
of course,
because they seem to have superior equipment and ammunition to the ones that we have. So we shouldn't look
have
too far
fresh gear. I have said this before too to Mr. Kayode here. They have fresh gear from across the desert. You see, the Libyan, remember Gaddafi. Go back, just look at your history. You see, the problem is we don't have a sense of history. So we forget so many things so very quickly. We are looking at only current issues. Perhaps, like Reverend Thompson said, because we are looking at only the political cycle. We are looking at elections coming up. So you have to say things that will work for this election. But what about, that's why you have people like us. You have analysts. You have intelligentsia. You have people like him. You know, what are people who stay and look at this problem from a long time? To make policy, you need to talk to people like that and say, hey, what is really going on here? Give us intellection. Give us an understanding of what is happening here, such that you will now be able to make policies, because policy is not for today. Policy is for going forward and solving an important societal problem. So you see, that's the difficulty here. So when you are asking for help from where it's not coming or where it can't come, you can't give what you don't have, you know, then of course you're not going to be able to solve the problem. So that's really the issue here, Madam Alero.
A few months ago, we heard from a faceless soldier. I don't know if you remember that interview that was held on, and he was complaining about morale of the soldiers and lack of equipment and how they do not actually want to go and fight this war. Has there been any improvement to your mind regarding the morale of those who are actually protecting us from Boko Haram, or supposed to protect us?
Well, again, reluctantly, we're going to have to say publicly and discuss things that if there had been a reasonable pursuit of a solution,